started with this priority. In the beginning itself, Sri Ramakrishna says, what for I have come here? What for? It is just to have a realization of the truth. So, fix up the priority. Then afterwards relax in the world. God wants us to relax. But when? That is the question. Not relaxing at the wrong time. Relax at the right time. This can be understood by giving an example. A young man came to Chicago for an interview of a job. His priority is not to get the job. It is life and death problem for him. Otherwise he cannot survive here. He has to go back. He can't stay one day more if he doesn't have any job. So priority, first priority, somehow he must get job. His whole mind is at it now. And he has come well prepared for the interview. His whole being is focused on that. He was grilled for about 1 week by the select committee to find out whether the person was really competent. The young man was extremely busy for the whole week. The interview was very satisfactory, and the young man felt a great relief after it was over. He enjoyed relaxation immensely. He then enjoyed a week's stay more in the city and then went home afterwards. He enjoyed relaxation. He enjoyed more than what ordinarily people would enjoy. But he enjoyed it at the correct time, not at the wrong time. That's very important. First he attended to the priority, then relaxed. In the same way, we have come to this world in order to realize the truth. Our first priority here is somehow make it possible to meet God through contemplation, through whatever method. Once we meet God, we have no more anxiety. Then we can live happily in the midst of worldly affairs. Sri Ramakrishna has said in one place, after realizing God, if you want, you can marry 100 women and live with them. Nothing will happen. Our joy will remain quite unaffected. But if we fall a prey to the attachment of worldly things, we miss the opportunity to see God and consequently suffer anxiety and miseries in life. Without giving attention to the divine power, our life would be always miserable wherever we are, whether in the palace or in a hut, whether in a village, in a town or a country or a big place, irrespective of place. It is very important, therefore, to cultivate the spirit of non-attachment if you have to live in this world like mudfish. Non-attachment. Non-attachment is a spiritual quality. It always keeps up your strength. It maintains your strength to face all situations with steadiness, without any vacillation, without any disturbance. You are not bothered about anything. That's the beauty of non-attachment, practicing non-attachment. Once upon a time, there were two brothers in a village. They made their living on farming. They took to cultivation. The younger one was greedy. So, after some time, he encroached the farmland of his own elder brother. The elder brother, what he had to do now, his land has been taken over by his younger brother. So he hired an attorney and filed a suit in the court. The younger one also engaged an attorney. After the hearings on both sides, the lower court gave a judgment unfavorable to the elder brother. Though the elder brother had his own property, somehow the judgment was given against his favor. His attorney did his best. He went to the court, argued everything. He remained unaffected. He received his full fees. Whether he wins the case or loses the case, he is not to be bothered about that. He does his job. Winning the case is not in his hands. Whatever fees due, he received completely. After some time, an appeal was made to the High Court, Supreme Court. The Supreme Court reversed the judgment of the lower court and decided in favor of the elder brother. It's very important to note this particular point here. The same attorney who argued for him in the lower court has argued now in the Supreme Court also. Anyway, the case was won. But he remained unaffected as usual and received his full fees. Just as he did job, in the lower court. He has done the same job in the Supreme Court. He got the fees. By the case was won. That's a different issue. The point here is how the attorney remained unaffected. One who desires to walk in the way of God should behave like that attorney. An attorney takes upon himself the side of his client and fights for it as if it were his own. He, for the time being, identifies himself with his client, but he remains unaffected by judgment of the court. He receives his full fees, irrespective of success or defeat. In the same way, a spiritual seeker should take upon himself the duties of family life and discharge them well. But he should remain unaffected both by success and defeat in temporal affairs. He will undergo pain or pleasure according to his karma. Hence, he should maintain a spirit of non-attachment to persons and things. He does things, that's all. This spirit can be achieved when he develops a conviction that God is the master of the whole world and human beings are mere instruments in his hands. So, I think this has made the point very clear. Develop the spirit of non-attachment. Even though you are a householder, you are saved. Develop the love of God. That keeps you in real joy and peace. Then only it is possible for us to live like the mudfish. We are not affected by the mud. We are not stained by the mud. Another important point, Sri Ramakrishna has said, one can realize God if one feels intense dispassion for worldly things. Is it easy to get such dispassion? One cannot renounce by the mere wish. Why? Because there are inherited tendencies. We will have to remove them root and branch. That's a very strenuous task. What is renunciation? It is the transition from desires to desirelessness. From false to truth. From unreal to the real. from darkness to light, and from death to immortality. That is renunciation. Anyway, these are the 2 points which I have noted in the last class. Which is the universal religion. It is the religion of Vedanta. It includes all the present religions of the world and even the future religions that might come up in the future. It is all inclusive. It doesn't exclude anything. It takes the position of the center. All the different religions are different radii leading to the center. So Sri Ramakrishna is offering us a great hope in our life. Wherever we are, what is needed is to understand spirituality and practice it properly. That's all. Only 2 things are required: understanding and practice. Nothing more. Not indulging ourselves in criticizing others or trying to find out what are the defects in other religions, etc., etc. No. There is no need, and by criticizing like that, we will not be able to correct the religions of the world. What is needed is try to understand the principles of religion, and according to the temperament, choose the path. Once the path is selected, no more deviation from that path until the goal is reached. That's the only way to arrive at the final experience of samadhi. Anybody can get into that highest state if his mind is completely focused on the truth. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to Master Mahashay, who would come there almost weekends. Master Mahashay was a married man. So, he is there to hear the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, how they should be applied in his life. And many times Master Mahashay would entertain the doubt whether God could be realized at all. Because he knew how terrible the condition of the mind because of the total involvement in the activities of the life. How is it possible to get out of these involvements, entanglements? The mind has been imprisoned, as it were, by numerous attachments of this world. Most powerful mind has become most powerless. All the powers of the mind have been sucked, as it were, by the most dreadful enemy, I should say, namely attachment. Once the mind is immersed in that kind of attachment, it becomes increasingly impossible to detach it. It is almost impossible. So, Master Mahashaya is sitting before a person who has seen God, who is manifesting joy all the time, speaking only about the spiritual ideas. He could understand the mind of a person, whoever it is. When Master Mahashaya came there, Sri Ramakrishna found out what he was intensely thinking in his mind. So Sri Ramakrishna answered him, well, don't have any doubts about whether God can be realized or not. I am telling you, God can be realized. Positively, he is telling. There is no indirect answer here. How he is to be realized, that is the point. But about getting realization, we did not have any doubts. Here is a person who has realized the truth, he is telling that. He can be realized. Then Sri Ramakrishna himself tells the way to realize him. What is that? Yearning. If a person feels yearning for truth, he gets it. He will definitely get it. Yearning is very important. Childlike faith. The intense yearning that a child feels to see its mother, that yearning is like the sky, red sky in the east at dawn. After such a sky, the sun must rise. The sun must rise. The red sky, just a few moments before actual sunrise, is called in Sanskrit Arunodaya. Once there is Arunodaya, Suryodaya is imminent. Rising of sun is imminent. Any moment the sun is visible. So intense yearning is compared to Arunodaya. So Sri Ramakrishna is pinpointing how we should proceed in the spiritual life. Develop yearning. Intense yearning is needed. Once the intense yearning is achieved by practices, the whole mind goes to God. Immediately after that yearning, one sees certainly God. What is the meaning of seeing God? He experiences immense joy. And he shares that joy with everyone in this universe. His whole personality is manifesting peace and joy. That is the characteristic of a person of realization. So the important point is that we should properly cherish yearning for the realization of God. Why there is not sufficient yearning in us? Simply having a desire, I want to see God, will not make the matter easy. Unless the yearning is cultivated, you can't have it. Why there is not sufficient yearning? It is simple. We are not allowing the yearning to sprout at all because we desire the things of the world. Things of the world have top priority in our life. Going to social gathering is top priority for me instead of coming and attending the class in the chapel. With that tendency, you can't have real yearning. That means it reflects one thing very clearly. It shows mind is just immersed in those things of the world. That's why we are running. Unless the mind is lifted from there, we cannot expect God vision. We are being attracted continually towards the objects of the world. There is tremendous attraction. We want to enjoy them, play with them. No one wants misery. Yet, we ignore God, the source of all happiness, and run after the worthless toys of life. As long as you feel the world is very important for me, it only shows God is not important at all. If we really want happiness, we should not hesitate to throw away all these toys and yearn for God. Then only you will taste yearning, the effect of yearning. Another important point we should remember, we should yearn for God without being impatient. Even if we do not see light, we will not give up our devotions. Yearning will grow when the mind gets purified by the influence of holy association and the practice of spiritual disciplines. Both are inseparable. To keep constant company with holy people and devotees. Second point, to get initiation and instructions from the spiritual teacher regarding the method of practice. Finally, to follow up spiritual disciplines with a resolute will. All these three factors are to be taken care of. Then only you will expect yearning in your heart. Then you will feel real yearning. We must persist in our efforts with strong determination, and everything will come about in due course. We must keep on calling on Him daily. A little meditation will not help effectively. Oh, Swamiji, we have got so many duties, morning 6 o'clock. I rush even without taking coffee. I come back only night. This kind of explanation will not give you proper yearning. Little meditation, just 5 minutes I will sit and make a sort of prayer and go. I have done. God cannot be realized through such lukewarm moods. We must yearn deeply. Without yearning, no realization. So we must develop deep hankering after the Lord. I must realize Him in this very birth, even now. No slow process. The mind that is immersed in worldly activities must be made to immerse in spiritual ideas about God. So we should make our heart a temple of the Lord and install Him there. We should lovingly and devotedly utter the divine name and try to absorb in that. As long as we tend to have some satisfaction for the things of the world, we cannot have real yearning. Swami Chidananda Ji, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, said, know for certain that God hears everything and knows everything. He listens to your least whisper. He is aware of every thought that arises in your mind. Whatever you ask Him with a yearning heart will be granted. These are the words of Swami Chidananda Ji, who got spiritual training by Sri Ramakrishna himself, who got illumination in the very life. He would say, if the mind doesn't become steady, if it is not fixed up properly at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna, pray to him with yearning. O Ramakrishna, please make my mind steady. My mind is restless, very unsteady, very disturbing, very depressive. Please make it all right. Know definitely that Sri Ramakrishna is hearing all your words and is able to know all your thoughts and moods. He will give you whatever you needed. So, how it is very important to maintain that yearning. Not only cherishing the idea, you must develop it, maintain it. It should be more and more intensified until we get the realization. Till then, we will not take rest or we will not keep quiet. We will not be careless. The moment you are a little careless, immediately you will be attacked by terrible dangers. Dangers of the world. In the sense, they drag you down again into the world. There's a wonderful episode. There was once upon a time a king. His name was Mandhatra, a very noble king. He looked after the subjects very well, devoted. Every day he would perform his devotional practices regularly. His wife, her name was Bindumati. He had 50 daughters through her. After some time, one incident happened. I am coming to that later. There was a devout sage practicing spiritual disciplines in the hermitage. His name was Saubhari. He had taken spiritual disciplines for the sake of getting illumination. He practiced 12 years of discipline, immersed in water, practicing breath control and concentrating upon the spiritual idea. For 12 years he is doing like this without any break. One day the sage was just in his normal plane of consciousness when he saw fishes moving about in the water around him. He saw them. They were enjoying in the water. His mind had become so sharpened over the years of his spiritual practices. Now, just because for a moment he wanted to relax his mind, what he saw, these fishes sporting themselves in the water. His devotional practices were disturbed. They provoked the sage to taste such a pleasure. How is it? Oh, these fishes are so joyous. With their children, grandchildren, wives, etc., etc. They are enjoying so immensely. What is it I want to know? So, once that thought came in his mind, though it was very feeble, it became very strong. It became intense, which made him came out of the water, which made him to desire to lead a householder's life. So he came to the king Mandhatra. As soon as the sage came, Mandhatra was very happy, and he immediately rose up from his seat and he welcomed him and showed all hospitality, showed all reverence and respect, worshipped him. It was the duty of the king, whatever the subject, whoever comes and asks for, that would be given by the king. And this sage, Saubhari, is asking the king to give one of his daughters to him so that he can marry and live a household life. The king was shocked. He was more shocked because the sage has become old, emaciated. Why this desire has come to him? What about my daughter's life? She is quite young. So, he was in a great dilemma. In his heart, he did not want to give any of his daughters to him. But on the other hand, he was terribly afraid to incur anger from such an ascetic. He does not know what he will do. Suppose he curses him, his words will become true because of his devotional practices. Whatever he says happens. So he has to decide immediately. The sage is standing there and asking him. He is looking at him. He must answer him clearly whether he is giving or not. Then the king finally thought of a plan. Then he said to the sage, "Look, my daughters are there in the apartments. You please go and meet them. Among them, whoever wants you to be married, she is welcome. I am prepared to give that daughter to you. But they have to choose, not me. It is not my offering the girl to you. Let them choose." He was under the impression No daughter will select him because of his old age and emaciated. Nobody will marry such a person. That was his impression. So, of course, the sage came to know all these things because he was a Jnani, Jnana Purush. Well, so he sent somebody to lead the sage to the lady's apartments. On his way, by his yogic powers, he put on a form and features of beauty far exceeding the personal charms of mortals or even of heavenly angels. He became so beautiful and attractive. He made himself very handsome, good looking, but he had to use his yogic power for that. See how the mind was dragged down from that level, from the spiritual ideal to this level of enjoyment. Anyway, the daughters were previously informed about the purpose of the visit of this sage. They were all anxious to see him. When the sage came and when they all came and saw, they were immensely pleased. Each one of them opted him. I want to marry him. I want to marry him. Each one was very anxious to have him. So the king had no other way. So finally he decided to marry all the 50 daughters to him. So the man who was practicing so much intense discipline, practicing breath control, pranayam and all such things under the water for 12 years, whatever the spiritual power he has gathered being used up now to make his worldly life more enjoyable. So he married them and he took all the 50 wives to his place. Again he used his yogic power to build independent 50 palaces for them, having beautiful forests, lakes, all comforts, luxuries, etc. And Sobari again used his spiritual power to make himself appear in all the palaces at the same time. That means all the 50 ladies would have him independently with them. So nobody is missing him. So each one is thinking that Sobari is loving her immensely. He is attached to her. Each one is thinking that way. And all the visiting guests were treated well with abundant viands of every description and the choicest quality. They were all treated very well. So the name and fame of this sage spread out everywhere. After some period, the father, Mandhatra, wanted to see how his daughters were faring. Just he wanted to find out himself. So he came He wanted to know whether they are happy or not. When he came, he was amazed to see a row of beautiful crystal palaces with lovely gardens and lakes. The king was greatly delighted to see his daughters, and he was very happy they are all keeping very well. Not only that, all his daughters have got children. So 50 ladies have got so many children. The sage Saubari no doubt enjoyed immensely all these things, wives and children, comforts, luxury. After enjoying so much, he began to introspect deeply over the events. He began to question himself. What has happened to me? I have lost all my spiritual glory. All my power is getting exhausted. What exceeding folly is mine? There is no end to my desires. As some desires are getting appeased, new ones are springing up. My expectations are unsatisfied or unsatiated. My mental devotions, while immersed in water, were interrupted by the sight of the sport of the fishes. The result was my marriage and insatiable desires are the consequences of my married life. The pain attendant upon the birth of my single body is now augmented by the cares attached to 50 others and is further multiplied by the numerous children. The sources of affliction will be repeatedly renewed by their children and by their espousals and by their progeny, and will be infinitely increased. A married life is a mine of individual anxiety. He began to reflect himself like this. This reflection is coming after the experience. My devotions, first disturbed by the fish of the pool, have since been obstructed by temporal indulgence. Association with fish led me to this type of life of senses. If I continue this way, there is no hope of getting liberation at all. Contracting worldly attachments will only end up in anxiety, worry and disgust. Nothing more than that. My intellect has been a prey to the desire of married happiness. Now, however difficult it is, I must put my maximum effort so that I can free myself from this terrible mess which I have created myself. I will propitiate God with all intensity and yearning to realize Him. This time, I will not allow the mind to detract even for a moment. I have found out what disastrous effect it had because I relaxed the mind a little bit. So I have to pass through all this fun, disgusting fun. I will take now complete refuge in the Divine Lord, and I will honestly put my effort and try to realize Him in this very life. So he made a strong will. He finally abandoned his home, children, all his splendor, all those things. Himself liberated. Anyway, it only points out how it is very important for us to know the path definitely, fix the goal, understand it, practice it. Yearning is very important. We yearn for the things of the world, so we are always in misery. If you yearn for God, you will be getting real peace and joy. That concludes my comments. Inspires everyone to go in spiritual way, and everyone is assured of progress in the spiritual path. Everyone is qualified to step into spiritual life. No one is prohibited from entering into the spiritual way. The only thing required is we must prepare our mind. We must desire to have highest spiritual experience. It is only through spiritual realization we are free from suffering. We get the real glimpse, the real taste of joy only in spiritual life. So, it means spiritual life is very important. It's only when we step into spiritual path our life gets meaning. Without turning to spirituality, life has no meaning at all. People are constantly under the attack of the disease of worldliness. Once they are attacked by this disease, it is extremely difficult to get out of that. Mind becomes completely soaked in worldliness. Without mind, you can't go towards spiritual goal. So mind is very important. It is the instrument of the soul. It is through mind we have to go. It is through mind we have to experience the vision of God. Sri Ramakrishna said, the sum and substance of the whole thing. So many religions are there, so many textbooks have come. Every now and then new sects are springing up, new saints are coming up. Every now and then new yogis are coming and attracting people. The whole drama is going on vigorously. What is the fun of all these things? Sri Ramakrishna summarizes. In one sentence he explains the goal of all these religions, different paths, different yogis, different types of Mahatmas. Just he puts in one sentence. That is, the sum and substance of the whole thing is to cultivate devotion for God and love Him. That's all. If we understand this, religion is very simple. If we don't understand it, it is very difficult. It becomes easy to understand if we have proper control over the function of the mind. It becomes simple when we give sufficient training to the mind. It becomes simple when we love to practice spiritual sadhanas, spiritual disciplines. Discipline is power. How long are we to just keep on playing in this world? How long? Tata kim, tata kim. What next, what next? Have a wonderful property in the Chicago suburb? Yes, wonderful. Tata kim. I got that, I got this. Wonderful. Tata kim. Put on, keep on questioning that. Shankaracharya has composed a very beautiful poem. Tata kim, tata kim, tata kim, tata kim. You have got a beautiful body, beautiful family, all wonderful, all round. good youth, everything fine, lot of properties, lot of funds, lot of money in the bank. Tata Kim. What next? When you try to understand, when you try to find out the answer for this question, then you will know the importance of spiritual life. It's only when we turn our mind to spiritual ways we can have some kind of peace in the heart. Long persistence in spiritual practices results in true devotion. You can't simply have it by just imagining. You must work for it. Work zealously, with full vigor. It is faith and devotion that make the idol living and conscious. People generally criticize the idol worship, not knowing the significance of it. The idol worship is prescribed only to concentrate our mind on the divine form and serve that form with full attention, so that mind is completely occupied by the thoughts of God. Carefully attending upon the services without committing any errors while doing the service. So when we keep on doing this worship with full attention, coupled with devotion, it becomes Chinmaya Murti. Life will be manifested in that image. Sri Ramakrishna worshipped the image of Kali in Dakshineshwar. That image became alive by the devotion of Sri Ramakrishna. It began to talk to him. Every day Sri Ramakrishna would see her in most beautiful form, full of sattvic tejas, splendor, resplendent, full of glory. He fell into ecstatic bliss. Thereafterwards he felt immense peace. He was overwhelmed with joy, and he wanted to share that joy with everyone who comes to him. So he began to cry, "Come on, come as quickly as possible. I have got here spiritual treasure. I want to distribute this wealth to every one of you." So, idol worship has got this tremendous significance. To invoke God, to invoke the divine spirit in the form, that's the important factor. There are so many things we have to follow while practicing devotion. Gossip, active or passive, tarnishes the mind and lowers it very much. It's a handicap to devotion for God. So we have to be watchful about when we talk. Talking uselessly means the time is wasted in a useless way. So much precious time is gone. Time once lost never comes back. Whatever the time we have at our hand is too short. We don't know how much time we require for getting the vision of God. We do not know that. We do not know what is his stock position in our mind. How many things are dumped there we don't know. The mind is to be cleared of all the dirt and rubbish. It must become clean, stainless. Then only you can expect the vision of God. Devotion is possible when we take all these measures so that our practices go on without any obstruction. We prescribe worship as one of the methods for practicing devotion. Realization is impossible without devotion. We do not know how much time it takes for us to have proper devotion. But the fact is, when we reach that state of real devotion towards the divine, we are sure to get the realization. Only then can we expect real peace. In order that devotion to God may arise and right understanding may come, there has to be a fence around a spiritual aspirant in one's early days of spiritual life. Just as a fence needs to be erected around a young plant to protect it from wild animals. Once the plant becomes strong, when it becomes tree, even the elephant can be tied. Nothing will happen to the tree. It has sufficiently grown, it has become strong. In the same way, we must become really very strong. We become strong when we develop true devotion to God. There are various methods to achieve that. Praying to God day and night, appealing to Him, surrendering to Him. Gradually we gain strength and we get devotion too. We must struggle hard to have love and devotion for Him. We have to struggle hard because for the time being our attention is divided. My love and devotion have been diverted to things of the world. And why I give so many excuses? Because mind is divided. I want this, I want that. I must do that, I must do this. Whatever he wants to do, it is all must for him. Whatever is to be done is not so must for him. That means he, according to his convenience, he begins to formulate his own way of thinking. So, devotion to God is possible only when you lift the mind from all these things and put the mind at the divine God. He is the very life of our life, He is the soul of our soul. There are two forms of devotion. Firstly, the ritualistic or obligatory devotion, such as one should practice so much of japa, repeating divine name 108 times, 1008 times, and so on. Or one should do pujas every day at a prescribed time, or one should recite 1000 names of God and goddesses, so on. There are so many ways of engaging oneself in devotional practices. That is one type, one form of devotion. The other one is the loving devotion. At this stage, the devotee thinks ardently of God. He finds no pleasure in things unrelated to God. Above all, perseverance is necessary. It will not do to discontinue practice if a little effort does not produce the desired effect. Continued practice is very important. There are many instances. In fact, a great sage, Valmiki, who wrote Ramayana, how did he get that name? He was a dacoit, full of tamas. The whole mind was in such a bad shape. Such a sinner, the worst sinner we should say, became a very great saint. How could he? Because he practiced devotion vigorously. He never discontinued his effort till he got the realization. He took up a vow, do or die. With that firm determination, he sat through thinking about God. Fortunately, he was initiated by one of the great saints, Narada Maharshi, who initiated him, who gave him the mantra of Sri Ram. Just you repeat Ram's name, that's enough. You will get everything. All your poison will be removed. He takes away all your poison. You will be free from the poisonous effect. And you are liberated once and for all. You will get immense joy, immense bliss. On your part, you must keep on repeating Ram's name. But the poor fellow he could not even utter properly even the simple name Rama. It is customary for the teacher to ask his disciple to repeat at least 3 times whatever the mantra he gives. So he asked him to repeat. Every time when he asked that hunter, dacoit, to repeat Rama, he would say Mara. Then he said again, all right, try again. Letter by letter I will tell. Rama. Mara, he said. Even third time also he said the same way. Then Narada Maharshi was a very wise sage. Well, let me try to make him understand. He told him, all right, you keep on repeating Mara, 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 Mara continuously non-stop, it becomes Rama. Rama, 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 Rama. Finished. The effect is got. But he had such tremendous devotion to Guru, to spiritual teacher, and he had determined to change his course of life. He wanted to get himself thoroughly purified from all the sins he committed by looting the people, because he took to dacoit ways. So, with strong determination, he sat through in meditation. Keep on repeating mentally Ram's name. It so happened he became so concentrated. His mind was fully focused on the divine name. He was not aware of anything outside. It so happened anthill developed there. Anthill. That's why he is called Valmiki. He emerged through the anthill. He got the vision of Rama, his whole life became blessed. So it means that nothing to worry. Don't brood over the past. The remedy of weakness is not by brooding over weakness, but thinking of strength. Always feel you are strong. Don't brood over the past. Think of the present and do what is to be done. That's the way of practicing spirituality. Jnana, that is knowledge fully evolved, becomes bhakti, devotion. Practice of knowledge leads the mind higher and higher, beyond the bounds of duality. But true bhakti is its own end. Where there is true devotion, the result is remarkably good. What does devotion do? It purifies the mind. We must try to see the divine in everything. That will make us spiritual. God doesn't accept anything that is not presented in devotion. One thing very important to be followed, we should cast off hypocrisy. It is because of this we do not progress in our life. If our devotion is genuine, there is no reason why we should not progress and realize God. What's the meaning of hypocrisy? Mind is not fully desiring God. That's the meaning of hypocrisy. I may like to have God, but I am not fully prepared to have God. What is the meaning of full preparation? I must be ready to give up everything for the sake of God. That is called true renunciation. Renouncing everything for the sake of God. Nothing short of that. If we desire to have firm and unshakable faith and devotion to the Lord, we should take to spiritual disciplines right earnest. What kind of devotion takes us to God? The child's devotion to the mother. What is meant in the Gita by steadfastness in devotion? Steadfastness in devotion means that though we may be busy with many things in the world, still our mind is always turned to God. We may not feel the same intensity always, but so long as a hunger for God is there, we are steady in devotion. If we fill our heart with devotion, our mind will turn naturally to God. Another important point we should remember, the path of devotion is most natural. Anything that is natural is very comfortable, easy to practice, easily we can adopt it in our life. There's the beauty of naturality. Food, for example, vegetables, anything that grows in a natural way, that enters into the system without any complication.